Are you gonna let me sit? Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna, and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2024. So this year I did read 52 books. I read a book a week. I usually read about 30 to 40 books a year, but this year at the end of last year, I guess, in like December 2023, I just came up with this goal that I wanted to read a book a week in 2024. So I created a list of 52 books that I knew I wanted to read in 2024 and assigned them months so that I would be sure that I stuck to the schedule. Do I recommend doing this? Not no and not yes. I think that there's a better way to do it than what I did, and I'm going to give some advice. First of all, I'm so happy that I did do this. It was a goal that I set for myself and I felt really accomplished once completed, but it did wind up stressing me out a little bit. I made a list for myself and I am really task oriented, so I wanted to make sure I stuck to the list and didn't sway from it. And so new book releases that came out that I wasn't planning for, or books that I didn't know were coming out that then I really wanted to read, or a book that I was like, I just really want to reread this book right now, but I haven't allotted the time for it. Or in summer times, like you really just want to read like a easy beach read, and I didn't prepare my list enough for that. So that is one factor that kind of gave me some regret. But I understand that some people aren't as obsessive as me, and creating a list and like timing it out by the week and what month I needed to read it was really not the best idea. And so if you do this, I do recommend I just don't recommend doing that. Be easier on yourself. Suggest don't make a list and go as you please during the week, because then you can see what you're really feeling and not despise the goal at a certain point. Reading is supposed to be fun, and you're supposed to read books that you want to read. So remember that at the end of the day. Just want to put out there, this goal of mine should not deter you. If you are comparing yourself right now thinking, I only read 2 books this year, that's amazing. That's great. The point is that you're reading and you're enjoying it. Your pace doesn't define you. I was fortunate enough this year to not read too many books that I hated. I actually really enjoyed a majority of the books that I read this year. Like everyone says on these, it was really hard to pick my top 10, especially ranking them, but I did it. So let's get into it. Starting with my 10th favorite book of the year. It is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. I cannot believe that I first read this book in 2024, but better late than never, because this book is truly a treasure. If you don't know, this book is narrated by Death itself, and it's set in World War II Germany. It tells the story of a young orphan girl named Liesel. Liesel learns to read and quickly becomes obsessed with books and reading and words, and book burnings are very prominent during this time. So Liesel begins to steal books. She steals them from Nazi burnings, the wife of her mayor's house, just anywhere she can get her hands on some books. As the story progresses, Liesel's world is opened up and closed down at the same time when her foster family decides to hide a Jewish man in their basement. The dangerousness of the war begins creeping closer to their small neighborhood. You'll like this book if you enjoy a deadpan, self-righteous narrator, which is Death. My favorite part of this book was that it's obvious that this is taking place during one of the most horrendous periods of history, but the way the author writes it, especially with Death being this cheeky narrator, forced to see the horrificness of Nazi Germany in a different way that I have experienced in other World War II books. You'll also, of course, love this book if you love books about books and all things words and reading. On to number 9, which is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. Oh, Kristen Hanna, the queen of emotionally fueled fiction. I truly do love this woman and her work, but I have to admit, sometimes reading her books, I will just roll my eyes at the fact that it feels like she's toying with the reader's emotions with just pulling tragedy after tragedy where there's not necessarily point to it, just to create and evoke this emotion. But this book was outstanding to me, and I didn't feel that way about this one. Check trigger warnings for this book. It is about domestic abuse. So a quick summary: a man with PTSD from the Vietnam War returns home to his wife and his daughter and becomes an alcoholic, becomes abusive to his wife. One day he impulsively decides to move his family, his wife and his daughter, to Alaska. Once they arrive to their new home, it becomes straight up survival instincts as they did not know what they were in for and how hard it is to live in the wilderness, especially during the coldest and darkest months of the year. It's scary outside for these women, this wife and young daughter, just as much as it is inside because of the abuse going on. I learned a ton about Alaska and just survival and how cold it is there. If you enjoyed her other books, I think you'll really like this one as well. Also, I forgot to mention I have one. Reading is sexy. On to my 8th favorite book from this year. It is, no surprise here, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. My Hunger Games love just came back in complete full force this year. I think everyone has an understanding of what these books are about and that this is a prequel. It's important now more than ever to read this trilogy or reread it, especially if you read it as a kid, rereading it as an adult. Very important right now. There's a reason these books are being banned. Suzanne Collins is just a genius. I'm excited for Sunrise on the Reaping. I am going to do a reading vlog. I'm going to go to a release party and film there, and then also do a reading vlog. On to number 7, which is Before We Were Innocent by Ella Berman. Based on the title of this book, and even if you were to look up the summary, it gives off like thriller vibes, but it's not at all. A quick summary, this is a character study about teenage girl best friends. They're trying very hard to bury this tragedy that occurred to them when they were teenagers, which was the loss of their third best friend. This happened over a decade ago, and the two women don't talk anymore, but they're brought back together and forced to reunite over recent events. You will love this book if you like nostalgia, toxic teenage friendships. I'm actually going to read my Goodreads review for this because I feel like it's a good, encapsulates it well. This book follows the intricacies of high school female friendships, the power plays involved, the insecurity, and the passive aggressiveness that 18-year-old girls do best. Throughout the entire novel, I was amazed at how perfectly the author was able to put these instances into words. Several times, I was able to point back to times within teenage friendships and think, yup, that was me, or yup, that reminds me of a fight with so and so. It was almost cathartic for me to find a novel that forced me to reevaluate just how difficult friendship is at that awkward stage of life. Okay, number 6 was a complete surprise for me. It is The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. Never would have thought that a nonfiction book, let alone a memoir, celebrity memoir, would be one of my favorite books that I've read this year. But oh my God, I loved it, and it was painful. It was hard to read. First of all, you, Justin Timberlake. Don't have much of a summary here. You know Britney Spears, you love her. Her story is a first-hand account of sexism in pop culture, as well as the unfairness of conservatorships, especially for women. It actually makes you hate everyone that was ever close to Britney Spears and how each of them continued to fail her. After reading this, I just want the world for her. Moving into my top 5, these books are so important to me. Number 5 for my favorites of 2024 is Bunny by Mona Awad. People either hate this book or love it. So bizarre. I absolutely loved it. Definitely one of the weirdest books I've ever read. A very brief summary to not give too much away. There's just so many surprise elements in this book that could be easily given away in a summary. This book is about a friend group of 4 very twee, rich, blonde, beautiful girls who are at university in New England. These girls are strongly codependent on each other. They are touchy and lovey, and they call each other Bunny. Our main character is Samantha, who is just starting at this school and is placed in a cohort with these 4 bunnies. Samantha is very much not the type of person to coo and ah and play with your hair or happy-go-lucky like these girls are, but she wants to fit in with them. Eventually, she's invited to hang out with them. Samantha discovers the sinister, off-campus, ritualistic, cult-like workshop that the bunnies have together where they, without giving too much away, basically create monsters. I really loved how sometimes where you would be reading it, it would be this very visceral, disturbing image that you have in your head from what you're reading about. But then at the same time, these girls are just so cutesy and all and really sweet. And it's, I just love the dynamic of that. You will love this book if you enjoy reading about coquette, cute girls, but are also cult like demons. My fourth favorite book that I read this year is Dune by Frank Herbert. I actually have a physical copy of this book. I am a diehard Kindle girly. It's it's just beautiful. Cannot stop thinking about this book. I cannot stop talking about it. I am annoying about it, how much I love it. Like I was mentioning with The Hunger Games, another book that was so prevalent in my 2024. I saw Dune Part 2 this year in theaters, I think 3 times. Have seen it multiple times on DVD since then. I'm going to attempt to give a broad summary. I think that I could go on for way too long and get too in depth and literally lose the plot. The book is set in a futuristic technology advanced world. The only thing of value is a drug which they predominantly refer to as spice. This drug extends your consciousness, extends your lifespan, is even worth killing over. The book's protagonist is Paul, who is heir to the Atreides family. And when the Atreides family is betrayed, he is forced to go on a new path for his life. His path is alongside his mother, who has a plan for great destiny for him. Eventually, during his travel and with his mother, he evolves into a man that the local people believe to be the Messiah or the Kwisatz Haderach or the Lisan al Gaib. I love the subtleness of this book. I love Frank Herbert and the way he writes and very subtly criticizes organized religion in a way that has completely gone over people's heads. So if you think a book about political mind games, something like you might see in Game of Thrones, but happening in space and a war over drugs. If that sounds interesting to you, then you would like this book. My third favorite book this year was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This book was by far one of the most difficult books I've ever read. First and foremost, look up content warnings. I think about this book truly so much. It has stuck with me this entire year. My Dark Vanessa is about a manipulative relationship between a 42-year-old teacher and a 15-year-old student. This book takes place in present and in past. So in present, the teacher is being outed and canceled and facing legal charges for essay that another student has come forward about. The victim has heard about Vanessa and wants to speak with her about her experience with the professor. But to this day, Vanessa is insistent that she is not a victim when, of course, she is. The book continues to alternate between past and present and show how this horrible, despicable man made this young, impressionable teenager feel special when no one else had. I love how this book challenges the concept of a perfect victim because Vanessa is not the perfect victim. She, at a lot of the times in the book, you hate her. She's awful and you just want to slap her, but she's still a victim. She is insistent that she's not. If you look up the content warnings and you decide that you want to read this book, I completely recommend it. This book is definitely now like an all-time favorite. I already want to reread it, and I think that this is probably a book when you reread it, you pick up on so much more. On to my second favorite book of 2024. That is The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. One of my all-time favorites now, and also one of my all-time favorite movies now too. I also love my Goodreads review for this book, so I'm going to read that. Here's my Goodreads review that I'm proud of. Rest in peace, Lux. You would have loved the 1975. Rest in peace, Mary. You would have loved Gossip Girl. Rest in peace, Therese. You would have loved the New York Times Daily Games. Rest in peace, Bonnie. You would have loved White Boy of the Month TikToks. Rest in peace, Cecilia. You would have loved the Free Britney movement. Heavily about suicide. Again, look up content warnings before you read it. So it's no spoiler. This book is about the Lisbon girls who all commit suicide. They're all sisters. It says in the description, it's in the first chapters. This is not a spoiler. The book is set in a neighborhood where everyone is obsessed with themselves and their neighbors. And the book is actually through the lens of a group of young boys in this neighborhood. So, of course, the male gaze is very strong here. These boys have completely grown up fantasizing over the Lisbon girls. They have a complete made up idea in their head of who they are because they've overly fantasized and fetishized about them. But they don't actually really know them. Even after their suicides, ever see them for who they really are, which are these young girls who never got the help that they needed. The writing in this book is just oddly enough so pretty, and the movie is so pretty as well. Obviously, Sofia Coppola is going to do great, amazing, but it's such a vibey movie. I love the soundtrack in it, but it's also about something so awful. You'll like this book if you like disturbingly beautiful stories with a hateful narrator. Also random, since I'm mentioning the Virgin Suicides and my queen, Kirsten Dunst. I met her this year. Oh, I didn't really meet her. I was an extra on a set that she was filming, and she looked at me and smiled and I waved. That is my Lux Lisbon obsessed. Now, my top book, my number one book, my favorite book I read this year. And this one was actually the easiest to pick. The top 10 was hard, but I knew that this one was going to be number one. I knew it like before I finished the book. It is just a perfect book. I love it. Now, 100% considered my favorite book of all time, and that is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I read the entire trilogy this year, but I'm focusing on this first book, Beartown, which is, of course, the best one in it. This is a book translated from Swedish. It is a Swedish author. Another book that is difficult on essay and look up trigger warnings before reading. I will say, if you read the summary of this book, it doesn't prepare you that this is about traumatizing things like essay. So I just wanted to put that out there and warn that is a prevalent theme in this book. This book is about a hockey town in Sweden where the coach of the star team with star players, they're teenage boys, the top player, the star player, the boy, SA's the coach's daughter. Frederick Bachman does an incredible job with this book. It is truly a masterpiece, and the way he dives into sports culture and how it is so harmful for us to idolize these men, especially these young boys, and making these athletes heroes. And he explores how, because of this, it influences who we choose to believe. It's incredibly well written and just a book full of empathy. After reading this book, I just did not want to read any other book for a long time. I was like, I just wanted to sit and stare at a wall and just soak in. I felt like that after reading The Secret History for the first time too. I just knew no other book was going to compare, and no other book did. I grew up in a small town that loved sports and definitely idolized, from the South in general, where we definitely idolize football players. And it was almost like therapeutic to read about this and see words on paper explain why people are biased and that it is unfair and not okay to hold these young boys to a hero like standard. This is a incredibly beautiful book, and I recommend it to anyone. I do just want to know, how can I watch the show? There's a show in Swedish, and I guess it's only on Sweden TV networks because I cannot find this show anywhere. I really want to watch it. If you know where I can find it, please let me know. Okay, everyone, it was just a great year for reading for me. I experienced so many emotions through all of these books, and am just overall grateful that each of these pieces of literature exist. If you have read any of these books, please let me know what you think. Did you love them too? Did you hate them? I want to hear all of it. Let me know in the comments. I'm so excited for all the books in 2025 that I have not read yet that I get to experience this year. I loved making this video. Thank you for listening to me talk about my favorite books. If you would like to, please subscribe to my channel and follow me on my social medias linked in the description. I'm wishing all of you beautiful 5-star reads for 2025. Have an amazing day. Thank you for watching. Bye.